Okay, the next step is to download SQL Server Management Studio IDE, which will be used to log into the database that we just installed. So open up your web browser and go to Google and do a Google search by typing Management Studio, and most probably you will arrive at this particular link. Download SQL Server Management Studio, which redirects you to a Microsoft website, right? When you click that, in this website, just scroll down and you will see the option to download SQL Server Management Studio, right? Click on this link and the download should start. So as you can see, the download started. It's going to go into my downloads folder. It's around 535 megabytes. So we'll wait till this download is finished and then we'll start the installation. Okay, our SQL Server Management Studio setup has been downloaded. Let's run it. It's called SSMS setup dash ENU, SSMS dash setup dash ENU. Right, so let's run that file. Okay, so here we have the installation screen. So the default location where it will be installed is given here. So you can change it if you want, but I'm going to keep it as it is, and then I'm going to click install. Right, so the installation will start. Let's wait till it finishes. Okay, so our installation is nearly finished. Once the installation of the management studio is done, you will have to restart your machine, right? Okay, as you can see, all specified components have been installed successfully, right? So let's close this. Okay, usually they will ask you to restart the machine. So if that happens, please restart the machine. Now in this case, they didn't prompt me to restart the machine, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, right. Next, we'll see how we can log into the database using the Management Studio IDE. Okay, in the search bar here, you can type Management Studio, and you can see Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18. That icon or that particular menu item appears. Just click on it. So it will take some time for it to start up. Okay, so once the once Management Studio starts up, you have to enter um, the password for your database. I think when you install the database, you specify the password for your system administrator account. We also call it the SA account. So the password for that SA account has to be entered through the Management Studio interface for you to uh, log into SQL Server, right? Okay, let's wait for the interface to appear. The first time you run the Management Studio, it's going to take a little bit of time to start up, probably since it's the first run after the installation, it takes a little bit of time, right? Okay, so our software is running, Management Studio is running. So from here, it shows you the server name, the database server name, which is the machine name slash the instance name. The instance name is SQL Express. Okay, so authentication, currently it says Windows authentication, but I'm going to select SQL Server authentication, because when we install the database software, you can remember I put SQL Server authentication as the authentication method, right? So for the login, I have to enter SA. SA is the system administrator account, and then I'm going to enter my password. Right, now I'm going to connect to the database. Right, so as you can see, I have now logged into the uh, database. By default, there are already some databases that are available. You have some system databases that are available. But if you want to create a normal database, which is not a system database, what you have to do is you have to right click the databases option, right click this and select new database, right? So I'm going to name the database as demo, and then I'm going to click OK. Now you can see the database demo was created in our database server. Now what we can do is, under this database we can create tables. So what we can do is we can right click the database and we can say new query. That will allow us to run SQL queries in this database. So I click new query option. Okay, now here in this interface you can actually run SQL commands, and you can create databases. Sorry, you can run SQL commands and you can create tables in your demo database. After you create the tables, you can populate them with data, and then you can run select queries and various other queries against those tables, right? So we'll see how we can create a dummy table and how we can insert data into that dummy table in the next as the next step. Okay, let's see how we can create a table in the demo database. So I right click the demo database and I selected new query, and then I got this interface. So in this interface I'm going to write my queries. So let's say staff is one of the tables in the demo database. So I can say I can write a create tables statement to create the table staff. So I can say create table staff, and then I can say staff underscore ID, and I can have it as an integer, uh, and then I can have staff name, which is a variable character or varchar, we can say. We're going to have 30 characters for name, and then staff address. Again, I'm going to have that as varchar. Actually, uh, yeah, we can have varchar or char for name and address, but I'll have it as varchar, and 40, and then date of birth of the staff. I can say date of birth, and the data type is date, right? And okay, set let's put some indentation for these, right? And then the finally I'm going to have salary, uh, which the data type is going to be numeric. So it's going to be 8. We can enter 8 numbers, and after the decimal point we can put we have 2 decimal places, and we can store up to 8 numbers, right? Okay, so that is how we can create that is the SQL statement. Now how do we create this table? What we can do is we can click the execute button. Now, normally, once we have written a create table statement, or once we have written an SQL statement, we have to terminate with a semicolon. But in SQL Server Management Studio, this semicolon is not compulsory. So you can actually delete the semicolon, and you can, if you execute this will create the table. So here the semicolon is not compulsory, right? So let me execute this. Hopefully there are no errors. Yeah, there's one more thing. We'll make staff ID the primary key. So I'm going to make this the primary key, right? Uh, okay, I'll put some indentation there as well, right? Okay, so we have to put a comma after each attribute, uh, and its data type. We have, sorry, after each attribute we have to put a comma. You can see here, right? But after the last attribute, we haven't put a comma, or it's not actually the last attribute. After the last line of code, or we can say before the last line of code, sorry, after the last line of code, we don't put a comma, right? So this is the last line of code. We don't put a comma at the end of that, but before all the other lines of code in a create table statement, we put a comma. Okay, right, let's execute this. Okay, it says commands completed successfully, and if you now expand the demo database, and if you expand tables, you can see the staff table here, it appears. So we have successfully created the staff table, right? Now next step is we can insert some data. So what we can do is, okay, I'll put the insert statements also here. I can say insert into staff values, and the staff ID 1 is going to be, the first staff ID is going to be 1, and for the name, okay, that's the name. And okay, we have to put these varchar data within single quotes, right? Then address, that's the address. Then we have to put the date of birth, and then finally we put the salary. We can enter something like 67,000. Now numeric data, you don't have to put it within single quotes, right? So this one is also a numeric data, the staff ID, and the salary is also numeric. So we don't have to put quotes, single quotes for numeric data, but for variable characters and characters, we have to put it uh, within single quotes. Even as far as I can remember, even dates we have to put them in single quotes, but we don't have to put single quotes for numeric data. Right? Let's insert this record and see. Now, before you insert, if you execute this, again the create table statement, they will try to execute that as well. So to execute only selected statements, what we do is we select the particular statement, and then that statement will only be executed. So if we highlight this particular insert statement, only that statement is going to be executed. Right. Also, you can see we have put a semicolon at the end. Semicolon is not compulsory. So, okay. So yeah, one more thing. Although it is not compulsory, some other database IDEs will require you to enter the semicolon, and especially if you are entering SQL commands in a command line, you have to enter semicolon. But and it's a good practice to enter a semicolon at the end of an SQL statement. But in Management Studio, it is not compulsory, right? So here I'm going to select this insert statement because that's the only statement that I want to execute. I don't want to execute the earlier one. Okay, so I selected this and now I'm going to execute it. Okay, it says one row affected. That means we successfully inserted that row. I'm going to create another two more records. So here below, I'm going to put uh, the second employee ID, and okay, date of birth also I'm going to change. And salary also I'm going to change. Also for the third record I'm going to change the values. Right, date of birth also I'll change. And the salary also I'm going to change it to a different value. Right, now let's insert these new two records. Uh, so we'll select those two records like this and let's execute. As you can see, successfully we entered those two records as well. So altogether now there are three records. uh, let's actually write a select statement and see whether the records are there. So I'll say select all from staff, and let's execute that. So I'll select it and then execute it. Always remember, if you just want to execute a particular statement, you have to highlight it and then execute it. Otherwise, everything before that will be executed, right? Or the alternative option is delete the statements before and then write your new statement and execute, right? So here I have highlighted this statement and I'm going to execute it. Okay, as you can see, my select statement executed successfully and we can see data. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the table. So I'm going to say drop table staff, right? And that will delete the table with the data. As you can see, it says command completed successfully. Now if I refresh it here, if I refresh this here, in the demo table, now you can see there is no staff table, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do next is, okay, let me delete this drop table command. Now I'm going to create the table in one go, and I'm going to insert the data also in one go, and then I'm going to run the select statement also in one go. So all these things I'm going to do, or I'm going to execute at once. So the table will be created first, then the data will be inserted, and then the data will be selected and shown on the IDE. So all I have to do is, I don't select a specific statement, I don't select anything. Without selecting anything, I'm going to execute this, which will again create the staff table and insert the data and show me the data, right? So let's actually do this. Okay, before that, this bracket okay, space, you don't need a space there. Right, okay, I'm going to execute this. As you can see, all the table was created, the data was entered, and then the select all statement was executed, and you now again see the data, right? Because earlier we dropped the table, then as you saw, as the next step, I created it, inserted the data, and displayed the data in one go, right? Right. So if you have SQL commands which have been typed in a text document, you can easily uh, copy the commands from the text document into here, and you can execute, right? I hope you understood what I just said. If you have saved SQL commands in a text file, you can copy it and paste it in this interface, and you can execute it, so that everything, all the tables and all the data insertions in your text file, all those things will be executed, right? Okay, so I think you have a good idea on how to use the IDE. I gave you a very brief demonstration. There are a lot of other demonstrations in the web. If you want some additional information, you can always refer to the web, right? Okay.